Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Kate, how you feeling?
I'm, today pretty good, but last week, down and out with a very big cough, I have to say.
You were down and out, yes, and I was sorry to see that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good myself, but we
good.
are, it's the weather is chilly out here in this hemisphere, and when it's and really it's going to happen at any time, right?
It's true.
Very possible to get sick, and you can't predict when it's going to happen. And it's an annoyance in general, but it can be an especially challenging problem if you are a freelance copywriter.
And you're unprepared.
And you're unprepared. So today we're going to prepare you.
Yes.
We're going to make sure that you have a system set up so that at some point in the future, because it's going to happen, right? You will get sick and you will have clients at the same time. It may be very likely that your sickness is so bad that you're out of commission completely, but that's also a possibility. So what we're going to go through today is what you need to set up in advance to make sure that should it happen that you get sick and it's not a 1 or 2 day bug, or if you are just laid out completely, that you are still fine, your clients still get their work, and your stellar reputation remains intact.
And you don't have to push through, whatever illness you've got. I think that's the biggest one of like, I have to do this. No, you don't if you have the system in place. So if you're feeling good and you're like, well, I'm not sick and I haven't been sick in a while, now's the time to put the system into place because you cannot enact the system after the fact.
Well, it's like insurance, right?
But right.
You buy insurance in advance and this is the same thing. Plan in advance for if and when you get sick.
Yes.
So point number 1, we would strongly recommend having a good go-to backup copywriter. CCA students, you know that you have so many copywriting friends, so many copywriting resources. We get told all the time that so many of our students have such good friends through the program. And, if you have developed those friends in the group, they could become your backup copywriter. Basically, what you're looking for is someone who has a skill level similar to yours and who you trust as a person. You trust that if you have to pass off work to them because you just absolutely can't do it, you trust that, number 1, they're going to do the work well. Right? You're not going to pass it off and they're going to kind of give it not much effort. And your client goes, this was the person you recommended. And also number 2, make sure that they don't then try to steal your client. If they do great work and then they say, oh, well, I could do work for you. And so you don't want that person. You want a good, solid backup copywriter. Now, we're also not saying that if you get super sick, that you should just throw this person in there. This is something that you want to communicate with your client. You could do this one of 2 ways. Either you could say to your client, I am so sick, but I have a copywriter that I work with and I trust, and I have brought them up to speed on the situation. Would you be comfortable with them finishing the work? Or do you want to change the deadline? I'm so sorry. I'm too sick to complete this. And it's very likely that your client may say, yeah, no, I think that's perfectly fine. Another option is, though, to also just keep the work yourself, give it to your backup copywriter friend, have them do the work, and then just review it before you turn it into your client to make sure it's up to your standard. Now, I think the reasonable thing, just to bear in mind, is certainly to pay your friend for their time. So you do want to have that conversation in advance and talk about how long it's going to take them and what portion of the work. If they're doing all of the work, then give them all of the fee your client would have paid you, or your client pays you. If they're doing a portion, then you two can figure that out. The point is this is not something you want to try to figure out when you are laid out on your back in bed, you can't get up and you're going, who's going to do this work for me?
Yeah. And I think the good news is most of this, the other points will help you hopefully not be in a situation where you get sick and feel like, oh, I can't deliver it and I need to turn to my backup copywriter. The backup copywriter, you want this in place certainly, and you want to communicate this long before you need to use this person or reach out to them. And you might want a few because that one person might be available last minute because typically this might be a last minute thing. And so all that's to say is the other steps we will give you will help you hopefully avoid having to use your backup copywriter in the first place. And so, to Nikki's point, the client might be amenable to pushing the deadline. You want to avoid this as a last resort, because I'm thinking of a scenario where, your project that you promised a client an entire homepage, and it's, 2 days before it's due, and you get laid out sick, and you're like, okay, there's no way in the next 2 days I'm going to be able to do this project. It's a really bad look. And you go to your client and say, hey, I got sick. And it's like, well, didn't you start this project already a week ago when we kicked it off, or 2 weeks ago, or whenever it was? So definitely weigh kind of your process with this, of how you use this based on where when the project kicked off, the kind of the timeline of it, and where you're getting sick in the midst of this. And obviously judge, sometimes it's, a 24-hour bug, and maybe it is. So maybe reach out to your backup copywriter and say, hey, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to feel tomorrow, but would you, if it comes to pass that I'm still not feeling well, would you be available? So get the ball rolling as soon as possible, and you might not have to use it. But again, everything we're talking about, the sooner you can do it and act on something, the better. There's some illnesses where you just know, you're like, this is going to be, I'm in it for the long haul. Like I'm down and out with the flu. This is going to be a week long. And even if I feel better in a couple of days, I'm not going to be 100%. So definitely factor in what kind of illness this is.
Your client deserves work that's 100%, right?
Yes,
Even if you're like, I can do something, your client deserves great work. And what we're talking about today is to ensure that you get them great work. Another thing is to establish a process of underpromising and over-delivering. And it doesn't even have to be massive underpromising and over-delivering. I know I'm going to get that backwards, but you guys know what we're saying. It basically, what we mean is making it a habit of, if you promise you're going to have copy by a certain date, plan it out so that you're done with it early. And if you want to, then you can send it through early and be like, hey, got a chance to get to this, got a chance to finish this up early. There you go. That is what we mean by over delivering. We don't mean doing tons of extra work, that kind of thing. But just when you have that built into your personal schedule, that automatically gives you buffer time. If you're under promise, over deliver, if your standard practice gives you a couple of days of buffer time, then you don't have to worry if you are sick for a couple of days, or if something else happens, if your sister gets sick and she has to drop off her kids at your house for a couple of days, or whatever happens in life, you're prepared. You've already got that buffer built in.
Yeah, one of my favorite things in terms of building in buffer time is to always...
Hey there, it's Nikki. I wanted to take a very quick minute to make sure that you knew about our free on-demand copywriting training. Now, whether you are brand new to copywriting or you've been doing it for a while, but you just can't seem to hit those income goals, this training is for you. You are going to learn the 3 secrets to landing freelance copywriting work without relying on frustrating job bidding sites like Upwork or Fiverr, or without cold calling strangers. And if you've watched any of the student success stories on this channel, and if you haven't yet, check them out. This is the exact same training that they all started with. And I mean students like Kate K, who is making 6 figures working part-time and retired her husband to help her build her business. Students like Stuart, who replaced his full-time salary, which was a good one, with his freelance income and then some. Stacy, who hit 6 figures in her first 6 months as a freelance copywriter, and Ashley, who landed the in-house copywriting job of her dreams. They all started with this free training, and you can start with this free training too. So sign up right now at freecopywritingtraining.com.
Deliver. If I'm thinking, okay, I could do this project within the next 2 days, I'm going to build in an extra couple of days on top of that, because there's no reason, and there's no copy emergencies, as most of you know. No one's dying. And so if I can build in weekend days into whatever the schedule is, obviously if it's a bigger project, it might be several, weekends. But delivering things to me on a Friday it just never makes sense. The majority of clients aren't going to look at it that Friday. And for me as a freelancer, I have Saturday, Sunday that I might use. Do I want to? Not necessarily, but I like the option. I want to give myself options. So give yourself options, whatever that is, whatever your schedule looks like. if you usually take Monday and Tuesdays off as your quote unquote weekend, maybe you think of delivering a project on a Wednesday just in case you need those days. And maybe you don't. But it's just nice to have that extra time and flexibility should you need it.
Exactly. And the next part is, this is one of the rules that you have that's one of my favorites. And we're talking about building in boundaries to make sure that you can get the work done in the time that you're given as much as possible. And Kate, your rule of, you guys might have heard it before because Kate mentioned a couple of times, but she has a rule that she will not start a project within 2 weeks. She just has a 2-week buffer. Like if someone came to her today and said, I have this project, I'm ready to get started right now, you would say, you look at your calendar and say, absolutely, I can get started sort of 2 weeks from today, which I think is just brilliant.
Yeah. Very occasionally I'll include a kickoff before then. So I give myself the option, okay, I kick this off and I have the creative brief and I can, get going on this sooner if I want to. But the client's expectation is that I'm going to start actually working on this project 2 weeks from whenever we kind of first start discussing it. So I think that's another way to flex it too, of like, oh, I can kick it off, but hey, this is the first week where I have time in my schedule to fully devote to your project. Again, put it in the benefit to them of, I want to give you 100, I want to give this project 100%. Here's kind of in my schedule where I can do that. And I know I just mentioned the creative brief, which makes me think of point number 1 with your backup copywriter. You need to do the creative brief, because if you have to hand this project off to someone, they need a good creative brief to work off of. And if you're sick, you do not want to spend 30 minutes on a call with your backup copywriter trying to talk them through and have the clarity of mind to describe to them the target audience. No, you want to be in bed. You want to be eating chicken soup. You want to be drinking tea and passed out, maybe watching some Price is Right when it comes on, whatever your jam is. You do not want to have to download someone everything. That's what the creative brief's for. So make sure you're doing it for every project, for yourself, and for this scenario especially.
Exactly. And then really along with it, I think the theme of a lot of these is just giving yourself time. Giving yourself between the time that the project starts and the time that it's due to end. Give yourself plenty of space within there. I know sometimes we talk to students and they say, well, but what if the client wants a project when I can't give it to them? Or what if the deadline doesn't work for me? Or what if I end up with 5 projects all due on the same day? Fundamentally, it's not going to happen because you and the client agree on the due date together. It's not like the client imposes a due date and you have to say, I will do it. First of all, if you have 3 other projects due on that date, it would be irresponsible to say yes. But also then if a client wants something on a certain date, you say, oh, unfortunately I can't do that, but I could do X date, whatever that is. So to begin with, understand that there is nothing's going to be imposed upon you. But once you and your client do decide on that beginning and end date, it's up to you to organize how you use your time within that period.
One of my favorite things to do, especially as of late, is taking the pressure off any way I can. And I know for me, that starts with starting right after I have a kickoff for a project, kind of going through my notes and doing a quick brain dump of what ideas do I already have? What am I already thinking? What are some options? Ooh, they want this playbook. How could I organize it? What are some of the ideas I already have for what needs to go where? And just doing a very informal brain dump of my, nothing's perfect. It might not be stuff I use, but I'm starting to get the gears rolling, because for me, the more sleep on it time that I have built in, and sleep on it at every stage in the process. So sleep on the kickoff and process that. I need that time to process where I'm not directly thinking about a project and I can come back at it fresh the next day with new ideas, better ideas, stronger ideas. Because if you go to sit down and do the brainstorming, concepting, going through notes, writing first draft all in one sitting, it's going to take a lot longer, most likely, but B, it's not going to be your best stuff. You're not giving your space, your brain the space to process things appropriately. So, once I do that brain dump after kickoff, maybe the next day I start to organize that. And it's very low key because it feels less like, oh, I'm putting together this deliverable. The deliverable slowly starts to take shape. And by the time that I feel like, okay, I need to start putting together what is going to be the headline on this page, what's the main piece of content, I already have done all of that prep work so that it's, okay, I'm just polishing at this point. Polish. It's less of like, oh, I have no idea what I'm going to say. What does this need to say? How do I need to say it? I've already played around with that in an environment that feels a lot lower stress, a lot less anxiety inducing.
Well, and like you were saying, to sit down, go through your notes, and then concept, and then do the outline, and then do it all in one day. It doesn't make sense right after the kickoff. It doesn't make sense then. But it also doesn't make sense right before it's due, right? This is, I think, those of us who, high school, college, many of us have the experience of waiting till the day before a paper is due and then sitting down and going, if that has been a habit, that's a habit you want to break. Number one, because it's massive, unnecessary stress, absolutely unnecessary stress. Kate's process of breaking it down over a series of days is so much smarter and so much more effective. It's also
way more fun.
Way more fun. And the key point too is that you're not going to deliver your best work to your clients if you're just writing it the day before it's due to them. And your clients deserve better than that. You can do better than that, and your clients deserve better than that. So Kate's process of letting it marinate, but letting it marinate in stages, not just letting it marinate for 2 weeks after the kickoff call and then being like, it's marinated, and then trying to put it all together. We would make a good cooking show. There's a process of marination, like you get, and I would say too that I like your point about sitting down, going through your notes right away after kickoff call. Absolutely. If you have time after the call, or as much as possible, schedule time. Exactly. To go through your notes while they're fresh. Oh, they said this and they said this, and I wanted to remember this, and go through your notes then, and then set them aside. Maybe the next day, go through and start to organize your notes, or maybe fill in your creative brief then at that point, or maybe you want to do a little cut. Well, however you want to do that, you have to do all of them. You have to creative brief, concepting, outline, and then write and all of that, and then edit, of course. But it does not have to all be in the same day, or even sometimes depending on the timeline, doesn't even necessarily have to all be within the same week.
Yeah. And especially, I think this process is helpful as much as you can do earlier, especially when it comes to reviewing your kickoff notes. And if you record a kickoff, great. But if you're going to go back and listen to that because you haven't taken notes, do it sooner than later, because there might be questions and gaps that you're like, oh, they said this and I meant to follow up, or I need to follow up and I need to ask this question. It looks a lot better if you're following up with questions from the kickoff the day after than right before it's due. So you might, again, and as you dig into the materials, as you start concept and brainstorming, you might need to just bounce an idea off your client. And you want to do that as early in the process as possible so that you're not coming a couple of days before and obviously clearly giving it away to your client that, oh, this person hasn't even started this big project.
That's a great way to lose a client, and absolutely incredibly effective way to lose a client.
Yeah. And this process, I have to say too, I've used it before in the sense and gotten sick and had it happen, but it sets me up where I've never had to use a backup copywriter, knock on wood. There've been times that are close, but because I've prepped myself and I read
Who would your backup
something,
copywriter be, Kate?
it might be
Just
you.
wondering.
Just saying.
You'd be mine.
It'd be a real big favor. I'd be calling in. Oh, thank you. Really?
So good for you. Absolutely.
Yeah,
totally.
This is great.
Yeah,
I'm glad we had this discussion.
No, really, it's kind of weird that we haven't had this discussion before now.
I know. Just assumed you'd be available for me. Thanks.
And I would be. I would make
you thank God, but don't do this, friends. Definitely have this conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked. I feel like we just telepathically knew, but but oh my gosh, thank God I haven't had to do that, because I'll read back through what I've written and I'm like, oh, this is actually solid, and maybe I'll make a couple of tiny tweaks and then I can send it off to the client. Maybe let them know I'm sick, and just, if we've agreed, to revisions, or there's a deadline further out that we've agreed to, just letting them know that I'll do my best to incorporate that. But touching base and most of the time, thank God, I haven't had like a 3-week long illness. So again, building in lots of time into your timeline that you are setting in the first place, so that you just have that buffer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think really there's the final buffer to build in is sleep time. And yes, literally, because you as a human, you need sleep, but also it gets back to that marination factor, that sometimes the best work comes after you step away from it. Kate and I, we both love our crosswords, New York Times Sunday crossword. It is, and the daily puzzles. Sometimes you can be looking at a puzzle and going, I just can't figure this one out. I'm learning to love the acrostics. My mom's always loved acrostics, which is kind of funny because it's not a lot acrostic. Acrostic, Nikki acrostic. Anyway, lots of revelations on today's podcast. But there, sometimes you're looking at something, you go, I can't figure this out. I can't figure this out. I can't figure this out. So you set it aside, you get up, you go get a donut from Dunks, whatever, come back. And then you look at it again, you go, oh, yeah, I know exactly what it is. And that will happen with copy too. Your brain just works on it in the background while you're doing something else. And if you can build in that time to you work on it one day and a night of sleep, it may very well be that the next day you wake up and you look at it and you go, oh, I know what I should write here. It doesn't work perfectly, certainly. But if you can build in that time to let your brain literally sleep on it, then you can often reap the benefits. And then, of course, you need sleep too. So make sure that's built in. It helps you it helps you prevent getting sick.
Illness, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what we always say, you have to take good care of yourself. This is your business. You are the greatest asset in your business. So you have to take good care of yourself. So while it's not always possible, the best way to deal with sickness is to not get sick at all if you can help it. So take good care of yourselves. And of course, with that, I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.